What is up, everybody? Welcome to our Trainwreck Sports podcast where we pay the bills. And we're back for another week here recapping the Buffalo Bills. I wouldn't say it was a good trip to London. I don't think they didn't get time to enjoy anything, and they definitely didn't enjoy it on Sunday. We didn't enjoy our Sunday morning. And then we look ahead to a date with Brian Daboll and the New York Giants on Sunday. So I'm here, Jake Micah, joined once again by my co-host, Mike Partha. Mike, we had a Sunday morning. We were all hyped up. I'm sure you had your coffee next to you, maybe some bacon, French toast, whatever. And then it was an ugly football for about 3 hours, pretty much. And the score doesn't show how ugly it really was, too.
Yeah. I can't say I predicted this, and neither one of us predicted this. We were both thinking blowout all the way. But I can say that I had a Star Warsian bad feeling about this game based on past Jaguars games and the idea of maybe a letdown game after a big win over Miami. I wish I would have had more conviction to say that. But who could have predicted all the things that went down in this game between inconsistent refereeing, multiple injuries? It was a mash unit on the defense, essentially. And decisions on the offense from either an execution standpoint or a play calling standpoint that were kind of baffling. And we'll get into those a little bit. But it's another one of the long line of Jaguars games that we touched on last week.
I can't believe that we're sitting here talking about a long line of Jaguars games. Another one to add to the list. There's a lot of issues that we're going to get into here. I think the first thing I want to talk about, though, is the offensive side of the ball, because they had 7 points, Mike, going into the last 4 minutes of that game. And then this is what drives me crazy, is because they can look like that for a large amount of the game. Their offense can look, I don't know if it's inept. I guess that's a word you could use, but just ineffective. The execution was poor in key situations. Specifically, they looked a little disjointed. And if you look at the passing chart from Josh Allen, you could tell where the disjointedness comes from. They didn't want to go over the middle of the field at all. Like, there was just, the Jags were able to take away a lot of what the Bills like to do. But also it's so frustrating because then you see Josh Allen just go into schoolyard bullshit mode and they go down the field and score at will. And I know it's end of a game, whatever else, but we've seen Allen do this all the time, like throughout his career, where they're like in a desperation time and they can just sprint down the field with ease. And it's so frustrating to see that after you see them struggle for a large amount of the day. And there's some kind of disconnect, or maybe it's just Allen playing free in those moments, or it's something else. Am I missing here? Like, is that something that bothers you too? Or what were your just overall thoughts on the offensive struggles throughout the majority of the day?
Well, if you look at the raw numbers, and sometimes statistics lie, but only if you don't know how to dissect them. So, I mean, Allen has had a pretty good QBR this season, 86.7 in this particular game. But as you said, those numbers are inflated by the last two drives, both of which were 75 yards each and both of which were mostly passing. All the yards were accounted for by Allen, whether they were rushing or passing. And that's the Jaguars playing mostly in prevent, especially the last defensive drive of them. They punted on 6 of their first 7 drives. There was, like you said, there was virtually no pass attempts in the interior between the numbers by Allen. There was one time where he underthrew Diggs on that so-called arm punt. That could have been a touchdown if Diggs was able to fight away from the ball, or if Josh had put like a couple more yards on it. But, I mean, I don't want to go to the Ken Dorsey bashing because it's a little cliche at this point, but they definitely went away from going under center and utilizing play action like so many people have been saying that they've been so good at. Dan Orlovsky's been hammering that point in. So just some of the stats as far as that is concerned. 81% of the snaps were out of the shotgun. That's 47 out of 58. There were only 8 plays under center through the first 7 drives. Allen only attempted 6 passes from under center the whole game, and only 5 play action passes. All the play action passes that he completed, I think it was 5 of 6 that he attempted, went for at least 14 yards or more. So you wonder what made them decide to get away from going under center and utilizing play action. All the data for the last 3 or 4 years that people have been arguing over it and looking at it more analytically, is showing that you do not need to establish the run to utilize play action passes for them to be effective. In fact, some of the data suggests that utilizing play action passes is what frees up the run. It's like the exact opposite of what is traditionally thought of in coaches and quarterbacks. So they went back to second and long runs and shotgun draw plays. There were some quick out plays where players weren't able to get separation. There was especially that 2-point conversion where Shakir could have had an easy run to the end zone if it could have been able to break one tackle. But is that the play design that he's supposed to be expected to break a tackle?
Yeah.
Or is that just poor play design to not get him free? So, I mean, I didn't even look up how many drops there were in this game. I know there was one big Gabe Davis drop. He otherwise had a good game. He had 100 yards, 200-yard receivers. But again, how much of that was 75 yards on each the final drives? Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox are kind of enigmas right now because they're not performing up to what we would think from a 12 personnel offense. Let's go through some of this stuff here. Joe B from the Buffalo Beat, who actually just returned after the birth of his kid. We welcome him back to the overall Buffalo media scene. But he pointed out that since 2019, the only players with a shorter depth of target besides Dalton Kincaid have been running backs. He's actually running longer routes. He's just not being used on them. His average depth of route depth is 7.1 yards, 11 yards. It's 14th in the NFL. Sam Laporta is actually 17th in that regard. So maybe, and this is something that has also been pointed out or suggested, is it maybe that in Laporta's case, he's not the number one or no, he is the number one or number two guy on that passing offense, and Kincaid here might be the third or fourth option, and Allen's only utilizing looks to him when he can't find Diggs or Davis open.
Thank you. I had that stat right here about the depth of target for Kincaid to bring up that conversation because it's Allen. I think you're dead on. I think it's Allen. I think it comes down to Allen's
trust,
where he trusts. Yeah, but I don't know, and I don't even know if it's that he doesn't trust Kincaid, but he's just going to default to Davis and Diggs like that when all else fails. If he doesn't trust the scheme, if he wants to change things up, like that's just where he's been looking. And I think it's been like the better part of the last year too. Like it seems like when he gets in trouble, he gets tunnel vision on those two guys, and it works. Like that's the thing. Is like you said, Gabe Davis had he ended up having a great game. He was 6 for 100 yards. Diggs was dominant on Sunday. Like Diggs was the engine again. But the Kincaid thing it's baffling because you see that passing chart and you see there's no throws over the middle of the field, and you look in there and it's like, why isn't this what Dalton Kincaid is supposed to do, is dominate this middle of the field and be utilized in there? And he's just not, either A, not being utilized there, or B, Allen isn't looking to him in those situations when he could be utilized there. And I don't know what it is. It could be, and I don't want to put it all, like you said, on Dorsey, because it seems it is kind of cliche at this point to blame everything on Dorsey. And I don't think the fan base in general gives Allen enough blame, even when he has a good game, for missing opportunities. You brought up a great point about the throw to Diggs, the deep throw that got intercepted. If he leads him, that's probably a touchdown. He threw it behind him. Diggs is going up there. It's a 50-50 ball, whatever. But if he leads him, it's a touchdown. There's the one earlier, the deep ball, where Diggs had to make a jumping catch for it. He hits Diggs in stride on that, and Diggs doesn't have to jump. Maybe Diggs makes that safety miss on one move and he's running for 20 more yards, or maybe he makes a cut and is running for 15 more yards and they're in field goal position right after that or something. And those are little things, and they're still big chunk plays that when you look at the stats, like you said, after the game, Allen's stats look great. But when you look at the stats, it doesn't tell you that could have been a bigger explosive play, and it could have been a game-breaking play. And those are the misses. Allen, there's a thing about Allen that I've noticed in his whole career. Like because of the accuracy issues, it feels like you can tell within like the first couple, maybe the first quarter. Like if he's pinpoint on, he's basically going to be pinpoint on for most of the game. He was not pinpoint accurate at any point in that. He was missing guys, like not missing guys, but just not throwing to them where they could catch and run, or they were having to make adjustments and things like that. And it affected him the whole game. Those two opportunities are the biggest misses in there, but it was the beginning thing. Everything just felt a little disjointed. And I don't know if that's an Allen thing. I don't know if that's a Dorsey thing. I don't know if we're going to talk about the travel, which clearly did not work out in their favor, if that was part of it too. But it seems like when all else fails and this offense is struggling, and they were struggling, that Allen just like, I'm going to just throw to Diggs and Davis and we're going to figure it out. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And I mean, I can't blame the guy for wanting to just throw the ball to Stephon Diggs. I say every Sunday, I think, just start throwing to 14. He's always open, all these things. And I truly believe that this year, now that with the outlook that we're looking at with the Buffalo Bills, that Stephon Diggs needs to be the Bills' best player for them to have their best chance at reaching their goals at this point. Allen needs to be great, obviously, too. But Diggs, the way they're using everybody else, Diggs has to be like, have his best season of his career. I think he has to be. He's on pace for, I think, 1,700 yards. He needs to really do that for them to be in these games, I feel like, going forward. And I don't know if that's a good thing. I don't know if that's a recipe for success, because I'm disappointed in the tight ends, man. And we're talking about Kincaid. I'm a little worried. I'm on Dawson Knox watch here, because you're talking about some big drops. Knox had a couple of drops again in this game. The one drop he had, what is he going up for a one-handed catch in that scenario for? Like, he tried to make some crazy highlight reel play. And these are things that have happened to Knox a lot this year. And even last year too. He's not like he was, killing it more last year. And so it's another conversation. Was Daboll scheming Knox open more, or is Knox not taking advantage of opportunities? But I don't know. And you mentioned the Shakir thing too. That seems like a personnel thing. Why wouldn't you want Deontay Hardy, like the guy that you brought in, to be the fast,
more elusive
shifty, more elusive guy rather than Shakir in that situation? So there's just there's puzzling things from both Allen and Dorsey throughout this whole game. And that's what I wonder, is they're just like a disconnect between what they want to do when it comes, not during the week. Obviously they seem like they're aligned when it comes, like they seem like they have a good relationship, like respect each other, have good rapport, everything else. But when the bullets start flying on game day, it feels like Allen and Dorsey, that's something, and it's against good defenses, against defenses that give them trouble. When they face a team that they can overmatch teams with their talent, because Allen is just that good, that this offense is just that good. And we've seen that the last couple of weeks. So it's like, again, hard to complain about the offense when you see all these charts every week and the Bills are all the way in the top right. But when you're watching in the moments in these games and you see those things happen, that's what worries me a lot going forward, is the disconnect that I've seen.
Yeah. I mean, we can, plurality pie it between Allen and Diggs and Ken Dorsey's play calling, like Bruce's exclusive probably has already done this week. But you can't deny, when you're having so much success under center and in play action, and you go away from that, and all of a sudden you don't have the same success.
Yeah.
I like I said, I don't want to do the cliche thing and put it on Ken Dorsey, but
but you're right, because
play that out.
He brought it up this week too. He's like, well, yeah, we always strive for balance, and we got away from our balance. They had 8 snaps under center on Sunday.
Well, coaches often talk about balance between run and pass, but of course, all the stats bear out, all the analytics bear out that pass gives you a lot more efficiency than running plays. Yeah. And I've seen analytics where it says you should only keep your running plays to short yard situations and red zone situations. So, I mean, you want to run the ball efficiently when you do, but balance doesn't mean 50-50 run pass. And I don't think by the same token, 50-50 on passing play should mean 50% shotgun, 50% under center.
Agreed. But the C to 8 and everything you're saying, that they just didn't utilize it as much this week, when it's the weapon that everybody in the league has been using, and Allen, clearly things were easy for him. So I don't know if I feel like maybe they went away from PA because that D line was just, I mean, Walker and Josh Allen were having a great game, and that the edges were getting upfield right away. But I still feel like that kind of helps freeze the pass. Like, I don't know. It was a very confusing game plan from the offense. But I want to talk about the defense a little bit, because Matt Milano and Daquan Jones, not necessarily out for the season, but out for a large amount of the season at this point. The defense had I still think they had like a decent performance. Lawrence was able to have a pretty effective game, but how do you feel about this defense going forward without Matt Milano, without Daquan Jones? Like, the expectations obviously shifted on what it can be, but like, what are you really expecting from them? Can they still be a top 10 unit? Can they be a top 15 unit, or are they going to start falling down the ranks when they play good offenses now?
Depending on how McDermott can scheme up and play call the defense, they could still be a top 10 if he still knows how to simulate pressure and, make you think they're sending 5 and 6 guys, but only send 4 at a time. But just to go over the impacts of Milano and Daquan, Milano, you're talking about a guy who can defend both the pass and the run. He's a first-team All-Pro. He's a Pro Bowler. He was on pace for a career high in tackles. He had 30 so far this year, I believe, and that would have topped 100, 101 would have been his career high, I do believe. I picked up on this stat. His passer rating allowed when targeted was 28. The next best was a linebacker, was 52.1. So he's a cut above as far as pass defense for linebackers is concerned. Losing him, he's a vocal leader out there, and you see a Bernard being just as much of a vocal leader, getting guys into position and so forth. But you'd want to have a couple of guys out there, at least in that regard. So Milano's not a guy you can probably compensate for some of the plays he can make with the depth you have. But he's not someone that it's like remember the Titans. You cannot replace a Matt Milano. As far as Daquan Jones goes, PFF says he is the best defensive lineman in pass rush productivity in the NFL and the 6th best of any pass rusher. A 76.9 grade. That was the 5th best of any defensive tackle. We felt his absence last year in the Bengals playoff game. So basically, Punafore and Tim Settle are going to have to step up their game in order to replace Daquan. But I don't think some people are arguing that Daquan may be the most, at least the second most, if not the most important defensive player on the entire defense, and that's saying a lot for him. Mm-hmm. So you're missing a big key guy on the defensive line. You're missing a big key guy in linebacker, and on top of missing a big key guy in the secondary. So, I mean, they have other guys who are stepping up in each of those different levels of the defense. I think they can still be a top 10 defense, and especially with some of the opponents that are coming up, they can probably, have a field day with them and try to get their confidence back. And I wouldn't call them preseason games per se, but definitely they can get some confidence going in and figure out what they need to do without having a big margin of error. But it's certainly going to hurt them going forward. There are some people, I believe, who was it? Pat Moran argues that the loss of Trey Milano and Daquan really hurts their Super Bowl chances, that they'll still win games. They might still win the division. But when it comes down to the playoffs and getting in there with the Chiefs, the Bengals, and the Dolphins, that this could really cost them in the long run if they can't hold back some of those offenses from the plays that they need to make, and if we had to play catch up with our offense.
Yeah, it's a legitimate worry. I mean, you just see it, like you said, the impact Jones has had pass rushing this year and just run stopping too. That, like you said, in that Bengals game, it was evident that he was missing. Joe Mixon had his way with the Buffalo Bills defense. And this is a defense that has had struggles stopping the run for years, man, since Sean McDermott has really been here. They've had, and especially had, some spot games where they got killed. I always remember that. What was that game against the Saints where they had like 350 yards rushing or something crazy like that? Like there's those types of games that worry me. And even this Sunday, like this is one of the, luckily they, like you said, they're playing essentially preseason games, if you want to call that. That's the 31st and 32nd ranked offenses they have the next 2 weeks. So good couple weeks to get a defense in line with some injuries and try to figure out who needs to play. But if Saquon Barkley plays on Sunday, I'm terrified of Saquon Barkley running. And I know that that line has been terrible, that D team has been terrible, but like those are the types of game breakers I feel like now with the way that this defense is, that like McDermott can scheme, he can do a lot of things, but if Saquon makes, Balin Spector miss in the open field after he squeezes through, he's going for 35 yards, and I just feel like those plays are more susceptible. And that's what I'm really concerned about, are the explosives without a Matt Milano, without a Tre'Davious White in the secondary, and Dane Jackson this week, who's not practiced for 2 days in a row. Like we're going to see Kaiir Elam again, who did not, he drew the Ridley assignment and didn't do great last week. And I expected Ridley to have a big game because it just seemed like that, Lawrence, first of all, Lawrence has been looking his way almost every other throw he's throwing to Calvin Ridley basically for the Jags. But it seemed like he was primed for a good matchup, and he had one. So there's just a lot of there's just so many question marks that I just don't know if I can put them in a top 10 category. But when it comes to a playoff run, for me, if this team goes 10-7 this year and they go into the playoffs as a wild card and they still have an elite defensive line who's getting a lot of sacks, the defense is going to be the thing I think about this defense now is the D-line has always been the strength going into the year. And even without Jones, with Miller coming back, that's still their strength, is going to be their pass rushing and getting pressure with 4. Hopefully they're going to mostly get pressure with 4, because I doubt the blitzes are going to be coming, more often with the injuries to Milano and in the secondary and everything else. But the formula, there's so many teams in recent NFL history too, that make the playoffs, get to the wild card, have an elite pass rush, and have an offense that can put up points, and they get through and get to the Super Bowl. And this Bills offense, Allen's playing the best, at least to it, a lot of the advanced metrics and everything else, the best he's ever played in his career. So this offense, I still feel like, can carry them to 4 wins in a row when it comes to January, if Von Miller and Greg Rousseau and Ed Oliver are playing also at the top of their games too, So that's I understand thinking, that there's going to be a drop off, but I don't think it's a death knell to their Super Bowl. It's a huge shot. Don't get me wrong. And I don't feel that they're getting way more respect in Vegas and from the markets and everything that I would imagine them getting. But I think that's just how fucking good Josh Allen is. And we're going to see him now a little more desperate, and they're going to have to be a little more aggressive, and they're going to have to lean on the offense more than McDermott probably wanted to coming into this year, being a more balanced unit and leaning on this defense more. So I don't know. I think they have to lean into the fastball, and that's Allen and Diggs. And that's why I brought up Diggs at the beginning too, because Diggs that's what's going to get them to where they need to go, is good enough defense and leaning on the offense. And I think the D-line can make them a good enough defense to get there.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I'm chalking this, or at least I'm hoping to chalk this up, injuries aside, because that's going to be a lingering thing going forward. I'm hoping to chalk this up to just a weird game overseas, because besides the Jets game, this is the first time we've seen them really looking off. And I don't think that's a coincidence, if we can touch on that.
Oh, yes, please. Please, can we talk about this? Because we talked about it a little bit last week. Man, well, I guess we'll just see what this strategy is. And they came out, they just looked slow, and the Jags didn't. There's no, teams don't, or fans didn't want to use that as an excuse. I think I put that in a group chat, and I got roasted right away. Or I put it on Twitter and got roasted right away. And I'm like, it's not an excuse for losing the game, but clearly they didn't come out ready. They did not come out firing off. So yeah, how did you feel about this?
Well, there's a few things in this game that people traditionally could use as excuses, obviously people going down on defense. Von Miller said just today it was some of the worst turf he's ever played on. Little fact, some of those Premier League teams, if they come over to the U.S. and they usually do friendly games, they will only exclusively play on grass fields. And I don't think that's a coincidence. And
Tottenham had that field.
They do have grass
for the NFL. Yeah.
And they didn't want the NFL tearing it up before one of their games, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Now, penalties, obviously, the refs in this game, we could go over at least a couple of things. The Poyer roughing penalty, where he couldn't have possibly seen the receiver catch that ball. He was trying to just make a play. And the refs picking up the flag at the end of the game on the onside kick when the Jags clearly batted the ball out of bounds. I mean,
oh my God.
And you could argue there might be one or two penalties the other way that the Jags fans would say were ticky-tack. But overall, it was just a very poorly officiated game and a very poorly broadcast game where besides the Spanish broadcast going off in the first quarter, they weren't showing half, or at least 3/4 of the replays on critical plays or critical penalties or anything to that effect. But besides all that, I think jet lag was a big factor. There have been a couple of people I've heard saying, some of the guys on the in the Hunt guest, which I am a fan of. I love those guys. They make me laugh. And Jeremy White on the GR Morning Show, who's one of my favorite guys to listen to. I always listen to them every day. But some people have been poo-pooing the effect of jet lag. And I'm not here to say it was the cost of the game, because as the Steve Tasker from Four Falls of Buffalo thing always says, there's always that one play that would have been, if it would have been different, we would beat them. and we've gone over one or two of those plays, the jump ball with Diggs. But here's some of the things that I noted here. Not only did Sean McDermott, but also Stephon Diggs said that they just couldn't match the Jags' energy. Josh Allen was saying that he was drinking caffeine for a lot more than usual. He usually doesn't drink coffee, but he was drinking caffeine all day to fight the jet lag. Some of the other podcasters and content creators out there, Ryan Talbot and Matt Perino from the Shop Podcast said they were exhausted at least a couple of days afterward. They were sleeping in until 9:30 or something to that effect. Pat Duffy from CMF and Let's Go Buffalo says he's still on jet lag days later. He's staying in Buffalo with his family to have a little London vacation, and he isn't. There are some effects that he's had on his jet lag, which I will not go into. He's talked about them enough on his morning show, and they were sort of graphic in nature. You can go listen to the podcast as far as that. Things that hadn't happened to him before. These things can affect normal people. And, you might say that top athletes shouldn't have that much of an effect on them. But if you're trying to be at your peak performance, then I would say that even the slightest bit of effect is going to have an effect on you. Joe Marino, when he on the Lockdown Bills, when he looks at the All-22, he was indicating a team-wide lack of sharpness. And then the kicker was Travis Etienne over on the Jaguars side, said that in the previous week against the Falcons, I do believe, which they did win, I should say, but he felt that they were sleepwalking that whole time, and having the time to adjust the Bills, Travis Etienne felt was a big advantage, a big edge over the Bills. They felt more prepared to play. Some people have said that there's no science to back this up, and I completely disagree. A website called Fatigue Science says that traveling westward is less problematic than traveling eastward, and West Coast teams feel this all the time, but they do it on an annual basis, and they're only traveling 3 hours. The Bills never have to travel eastward because of the nature of where they are in the country. They had to travel 5 hours eastward for this game, and it's not something that they had done since before the McDermott administration came in. So whatever their sports science people were thinking about, flying in on Thursday, Friday morning on their London time, I think it was a big misplay. We were speculating that maybe the Jaguars, having to sit around in London, having made this trip before, might be getting a little antsy about getting home. But maybe as bored as you might be, as much as how many times you've been to Big Ben and seen all the sights before, your body physiologically after 2 or 3 days, if it's had time to adjust, that looks like to be a big advantage. And we're going to see going forward whether that's holds true for other teams, because the Ravens and Titans are going to play next in London. The Ravens have said they're leaving early for London, and the Titans have said they're, I believe, leaving on that Thursday, Friday morning schedule. So the Ravens look like a better team regardless, a little bit better, but we're going to see how that effect plays out, especially from the comments of the athletes after that particular game. Is going to be interesting for me to see, at least.
It's a great points all around. And I think that you mentioned the thing about, you expect professional athletes to be able, like, it shouldn't affect them as much, but when all things are similar, like these are two teams that are, they're both very good teams. They're very similar talent levels, everything else. If there's that little bit of difference that they have the advantage over it, it can be astronomical in a game like that. And like you said, I didn't know what the motivation level would be from the Jags for being there another week. You see a lot of teams, you think of hockey and basketball a lot, where teams are on like a 4-game, 5-game road trip on the West Coast or on the East Coast, whatever opposite coast. And usually that last game, you're like, schedule loss. Like, that's just an L. They want to get home. They usually are just done and they're tired from everything. And so I was like, is that what it's going to be for the Jags, or like what ended up happening for the Jags? And it was clearly the opposite. And you can't just speed up jet lag. Like, all the coffee in the world is not going to fix Josh Allen and make him feel better. And so, that sharpness is key, man. And it's a team it's a team that they couldn't just walk through, like if they were playing the Raiders in London and did that, it might have been be able to get a win out and everything. But that's a good Jags team who's going to compete for a playoff spot and compete for their division and everything else. So I'm completely with you. I think it was a huge deal. It's not the only reason they failed to execute still, but who knows what mental effect it had on all those guys. And we'll never be able to just speak to that on this podcast, but it's clear there was some kind of effect in that game from what they were feeling from the travel and everything else.
Agreed.
Where do you have them now? We're talking about the AFC contenders. Where do you have them now? The Bills. They're 3-2. They're one game back of the Dolphins again. So Dolphins fans are celebrating their Week 5 AFC East lead right now. The Chiefs are 4-1. The Jags 3-2. I believe the Ravens are 4-1 as well. I personally still feel like all the AFC contenders have flaws, and maybe the Bills' injuries are a bigger flaw than most. But none of these teams have been world beaters like the San Francisco 49ers level on the other side of the conference or other conference there. So how do you feel about their place among that group of the top tier? And I guess throw the Bengals in there after a nice bounce back win last week.
It'll be interesting to see how the Bengals develop, if they look like the team of
this
old,
is what they do,
this
right?
week.
Like they start slow and then just win a bunch of games, so it might just be time for them again.
Well, they started so last year just naturally. Yeah. This year, you could chalk it up more to Joe Burrow's inability to throw long because of his leg injury. But it looks like he's gotten over that, at least temporarily. Among AFC contenders, the Chiefs haven't looked like world beaters. They struggled to beat the Jags on a regular, home soil game. I would say the Ravens have their flaws. You thought they were a good team going in. The Jaguars, obviously, that's tough. We're going to lose a tiebreaker to them going forward. Like I said, I chalk this game. I'm going to chalk the majority of this game up to jet lag and just bad play calling as it is. If we can get back to under center play action and we can just have Eastern Standard Time games to play under, I think we should be good going forward. And it'll be hard to see what level they're on, especially when we're going to talk about our predictions versus the Giants, and then the Patriots are going to be after that. It's going to be hard to gauge them because we should expect them to not just handle these teams, but like dominate them.
Yeah.
It's not going to be for a couple more weeks until they see more substantial competition that we're going to be able to gauge where they are. If in fact they do what we expect them to do, what they should do.
Yeah, even the game after the Patriots is Thursday night against the Bucs, who the Bucs have been better this year, but I still feel like the Bills are a class ahead of them. So yeah, before they play another elite team or a team that's really going to challenge them, we have some time there. So they might be able to just get by, and then we'll see real issues come up. But that's exciting for me to get Von Miller back ramped up more than anything, because I mean that's an opportunity, I think, these next couple games to see where this defense is and try to get him and get that defensive line cooking again, because that's going to be their biggest way to, I think, take out these contenders like you're talking about. So what about the division, though? With Miami a game ahead, their schedule, they've got some tough games coming up. I know they've got the Chiefs in London in a few weeks, or Germany in a few weeks. They've got the Eagles on the schedule. But I just feel like, I don't know, I'm not feeling good about the division right now, Mike. I'm not going to lie. I just feel like the Dolphins are going to pace the competition a lot, just because they're going to blow a lot of teams out too.
Yeah. The Dolphins look like they can blow out normal teams, normal non-Sean McDermott coach teams. We can blow out some of those teams ourselves if we're not, like I said, if we're not traveling overseas eastward 5 hours. I mean, if they're gonna stay ahead of us by one game, then that's going to be really disheartening for us, even though we have a game up on them. And the fact that we can't get an extra game up on them until the very end of the season, which is when the rematch occurs in Miami. So, yeah, I still feel good about being competitive in the division, just because it's the Dolphins and us.
Yeah.
But if they're going to start picking up wins because they don't face any other stiff defenses, then it's going to be tough for us, despite getting one over on them.
Yeah, just got to keep right here in this spot right here. If they're one game back going into that week 18, I mean, they've got the head-to-head right now. So that's all we need to be. Don't even need to be tied for first place going into week 18. As long as the Bills are in this exact spot, stay where they are in week 5 at the very least, everything's still in front of them, winning the division and having a home playoff game and everything else. I think they can do that, but it's just scary watching the Dolphins just, obliterate lesser competition and just wonder how are they going to slip up somewhere when they're doing this. I feel like it's going to happen, but Tua's been amazing, man. Like Tua is just, and the thing is, yeah, I just don't know. It's going to happen. I just don't know where, and I'm not going to predict it to happen. I think that will come down to week 18 though, and it'll be like a 12-4 Dolphins versus 11-5 Bills. I really do feel like that's where we're we're going to be hanging around, and we'll see what happens from there. But we got a game on Sunday night, like you said. The Bills, 14-point favorites right now against Brian Daboll and the visiting New York Football Giants, who they're struggling a little bit. The things are just not going great in New York. This was a playoff team last year who is not looking like a playoff team this year. That's for sure. Daniel Jones might play, might not. It could be Tyrod Taylor, which would just be, I mean, the how funny would it be if it's like Tyrod Taylor, Isaiah Hodgins, and Cole Beasley facing the Bills on Sunday night? Like, it would just be just such a weird thing to see in this big Sunday night matchup with Daboll back in town. But what are you expecting from this? Do you think that they cover the 14? Do you have any worries about the Giants keeping it close this week? Any worries about coming back from London and maybe the guys still adjusting? Like, how are you feeling about this game coming up on Sunday?
Well, the Giants made a couple of splash plays against the Dolphins that kept that game within a couple of scores.
Yeah.
So that's the only way I can see them keeping this game close. As far as all the ex-Bills coming back, I mean, the narrative that it's a revenge game for all these guys, I think that only would apply to Isaiah Hodgins, because he was the one that was put on the practice squad and picked up by the Giants, and all of a sudden is productive, and all the fans here are clamoring, well, why didn't we see this in Isaiah Hodgins? And he might have the same thoughts himself. But Cole Beasley was brought back last year during the end of the playoff run. He was given a chance to produce. He may have caught one or two reasonably relevant passes. Tyrod Taylor, he led us, so to speak, to the end of our playoff drought, but wasn't good enough to get us any farther than that. And Coach Daboll, what were we supposed to do? Hold him back from his promotion?
Yeah.
I don't think most of these guys besides Isaiah don't really have revenge on their mind, but it is interesting to see all the different dynamics of the Bills-Giants connections coming into play, and who would have the advantage in that if all things were equal. I mean, McDermott probably knows how Daboll thinks in his offense, but Daboll knows most of, if not the entire personnel of the Bills offensively and defensively. My thought is, when these revenge games come up, when ex-coaches play their old teams, I would think the ex-coaches usually have the advantage factor, because the Bills are not as familiar with the Giants personnel as Coach Daboll is with the Bills personnel. But that being said, we're talking about a Giants team that's dead last in total offense. They're 31st in scoring. The Patriots are 31st, by the way. They're 32nd, by the way, I should say. They're 27th in total defense, 29th in scoring defense. Ooh. I mean, these guys are just looking to be torn apart. And especially if Daniel and Saquon are not playing, especially if Saquon's not playing. I mean, I don't think it makes a difference if Daniel Jones is playing versus Tyrod Taylor. I mean, as fun as that'll be, but they're the worst combined. The Giants are the worst combined offensive and defensive EPA per play on top of that. So, I mean, they're just looking. If they're not disheartened by now, they should be disheartened by the end of this game. I'm predicting the Bills will cover 14, but not by too much more than that.
Okay. I'm completely with you. I think if Saquon plays, there's a couple explosive plays that will keep the Giants not in the game, but close-ish, within a couple possessions for most of the time. But you mentioned those Giants defensive stats, and I think that the Bills and Josh Allen specifically know, like, with like I said earlier, the defensive injuries and everything else, like, they're going to have to be more aggressive and be more up tempo and try to, get teams out of these games early by scoring a ton of points. I don't think the Giants can do anything to the Bills offense. I don't think they can do anything to slow them down. I would imagine that opening drive for the Bills, they walk right down the field, and that's what I expect from a lot of the night. So I think the Bills cover. I think it's probably like a 38-17 type of game, maybe 38-20, somewhere around there. But I still think the Giants are going to get some points, and they're going to have, like you said, they had some big chunk plays against the Dolphins. I think Daboll will be able to scheme up some good chunk plays. And this is a kitchen sink game for the Giants too. So I'm sure there's going to be some trick plays, everything else. Like, they're going to pull everything out that they can, but I don't think it's going to matter. I think the Bills offense is going to be too dominant on this night, and that's what sets them apart. And I'm hoping for a huge Josh Allen game. It would be nice if a national, after the Monday night debacle, if he on Sunday night had like a 450-yard, 5-touchdown performance or something like that. And even if it's against the Giants, at least that would, I don't know, just feel good for Bills fans watching in front of a national audience again and see the team show out a little bit rather than the last 2 times.
Yeah, it'll be nice to beat up a New Jersey team for a change instead of them humiliating us on primetime television.
We still have a chance to have a winning new record against New Jersey this year. We gotta get this one though. All right, so before we go, Broncos Chiefs tonight. Taylor Swift in the building, Mike. I'm sure that's what you were looking forward to. Can Russ and the Broncos do anything tonight, or is this going to be just keep watching hockey after the Sabres game, throw on ESPN Plus and find a 10 o'clock game?
Yeah. Kelsey is going to play. He's going to be heavily taped up, so he might be a little hobbled. He might not be himself, but I'm sure Patrick's going to get the ball to his boy while his girl's in attendance.
Yeah.
Both of these teams are actually closer in scoring offense than I saw when I was looking up their overall stats. KC 25.6 points per game, Denver 24.2. So the world-beating KC offense is not quite firing on all cylinders. I mean, 25 points per game is nothing to sneeze at, but Denver being right there with them, that puts them in sort of the upper middle of the pack in the NFL.
Yeah.
But of course, the Denver on the other side, dead last in scoring defense, allowing 36.2 points per game. So, I mean, it's going to be not unlike the Bills and the Giants. It's going to be a get-right game for KC. They're going to eat them for lunch. And, yeah, I'm sure Amazon Prime is going to have like 10 million more subscriptions with all the Swifties coming on to watch the game. So, good for them.
You mentioned the Chiefs offense. In 5 games, they have 1 game over 27 points. They beat the Bears 41-10 in the original Swiftie game, and the Bears still are a mess. But other than that, they lost week 1, scored 20 points, only 17 against the Jags, 23 at the Jets, and 27 last week. That's why when I was talking about among the AFC contenders, like all these teams are flawed. KC, if the Bills, the betting markets still love the Bills just as much really as KC, but KC's offense is the pass catchers specifically, like they've had issues being explosive this year, and maybe that happens again tonight. But I think Mahomes has there's some crazy streak right now they have over the Broncos too. It's like 10 or 11 game win streak.
I think it goes back to the Peyton Manning era
Yeah.
that they've had a winning streak. It's almost like what we've experienced with Tom Brady, the Patriots.
Yeah, that's what this feels like tonight. So I think that I think the Chiefs get it done, but you're right on it with the Chiefs struggles, because there's something to be said about a team that you're exposed to be, we just have in our mind as the high flying offense, Mahomes up and down the field and everything. And they've only hit over 30 points 1 time. It's against the Bears. Does that really count? Like anybody could score 30 points against the Bears. I could score 30 points against the Bears, I think. So I don't know. We'll see. It should be a fun game.
Broncos scored 30 points against the Bears. That tells you everything.
There you go. So yeah, I think the Chiefs win. I think they get to 30 tonight. I'll say 31-17. I think that's where we'll look at. But I don't know. The Chiefs, it's an interesting year in the AFC, because I really am not. I'm just not impressed by any of the contenders, I shouldn't say impressed, but just I'm not sold on anybody yet, like I would have been the last couple of years. Like the Bengals obviously have had their issues, but maybe it's just health and they're going to figure it out. The Ravens have won the games in front of them, but they haven't looked like the 14-3 Ravens from a couple years ago, and the MVP level Lamar from a couple years ago. The Browns are dealing with injury issues after a good start. The AFC South is just, who knows? Like it could be the Jags if it's Gardner Minshew or CJ Stroud, wins the division. Who knows? Like, it's an interesting time in the AFC.
What a narrative flip that the NFC now has a couple of world beaters and the 49ers and the Eagles atop their mountain, and the AFC seems to be a mishmash of a few contenders and pretenders.
Yeah, it's crazy.
How are we feeling about the Sabres tonight in the overall? I mean, I'm looking forward to Devin Levi standing on his head the whole season through, because A, he's that good, and B, he wants that kind of responsibility. And he only just got here. He's only going to get better after that. As far as only backup goalie and defensive depth is the only thing that can really hinder them. So I'm looking forward to a very dangerous team, especially when they're wearing those black and reds.
Yeah, well, they're a different level in the black and reds, the evil Sabres. You're speaking, Mike. This is why you're such a great co-host, because you just speak my language sometimes. I am all in on Devin Levi as a guy that Like he's defied expectations literally his entire career. No one thought he was gonna make Team Canada. No one thought he was gonna be the starter at Northeastern. No one thought he was gonna step into the NHL and be effective, a starter or a star, or whatever. And he's gonna take the reins tonight. And I expect big things from Levi. I'm excited. I'm really optimistic about the team this year. I said it's our friend Ronnie texted me the other day and said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel about the Sabres making the playoffs? And I said like a 6.5 to 7. And they missed it by 1 point last year. That division is very tough. So like that's the biggest thing is like any injury slip-ups, like you said, the defensive depth, if they have some injuries, especially to Dahlin or Power, there could be a lot of goals that start coming in. And the thing that I think that this team will be able to get over that they've had trouble with the last couple of years is those big long losing streaks and the long lulls. Like that's what killed them last year. They don't have an 8-game losing streak last year. They make the playoffs. I think that's what they eliminate this year. And it gets them into I'll say they make a wild card spot safely. They make the first wild card and they will play. They'll play in the playoffs. I think this is a good enough roster if they're healthy most of the year, and the guys are just going to get better. Like that's the thing is that like I saw someone trying to say, well, Thompson can't possibly get to 96 points again. It's like, well, no one thought he was going to get to 96 in the first place. So why can't he get to 96 again? Like there's a lot of that going on with this team. Yeah, I'm very excited about it. And I think that tonight, I think they're going to win tonight because that place is going to be just juiced up. And you know how they play when they've had the last couple of years when it's been a packed barn and they felt the energy. I think they're going to come out flying tonight and have a nice 5-2 win. That's my prediction.
Wow. Yeah, I'm sure they can feed off the crowd, but I know nothing about the Rangers and much about how really tough the division is. But we thought the Bills were going to come flying out of the gate versus the lowly Jets against Zach Wilson of all guys, especially after Aaron Rodgers went down. And look what happened there. Obviously, different sport, different.
That's why it's got to happen this time. If it happened bad the first time, I'd say we're getting a good one. You know? No, I feel you. You know, you don't want to come in too crazy. You never know with these New York teams what they're gonna pull off. The Rangers are going to be good this year, but that's why this is a good litmus test too, because the Rangers are supposed to be a team that is top of their division. Everything else, if the Sabres can come out and handle a team like this on opening night, it'll be good vibes all around for Sabres fans and everything else alike. But that division is going to be tough. There's not a team that I would say is like a bad team. There's just going to be teams that fall down the rankings because they have to, I think. So it's going to be a fun season though. Even with all the Bills injuries, this is in my lifetime the most exciting time for Buffalo sports between the two teams and the most optimistic and the highest expectations for sure. So enjoy the ride more than anything, because it's going to be a fun season, I think, no matter what. And I hope we hear some High School Musical tonight from your guy, Principal Skinner there, because that's talk about keeping the vibes high. Jeff Skinner is the ultimate vibes guy. So hoping we get some goals from him. That's a great shirt. I wanted to shout your shirt out before we left.
Thanks.
There.
26 shirts.
Hell yeah. 26 shirts hat too as well. Go get that there. That's it. We paid the bills. Go watch the Sabres game. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, fans. Thank you, everybody. Sunday Night Football against the Giants. We'll be back here next week to break it all down.